Hello, you're listening to Radio Bonita. Radio Bonita, broadcasting out of Xpizza on Front Street. I'm in the studio with Uncensored New York's Samantha Sutcliffe and Brother Graham Fort Gang, here to talk about our upcoming party with the old Make Love Not War at a secret bathhouse location on New Year's Day. Say hi, Graham.
What up, guys? Also want to introduce Buckley, the studio dog today.
Woof! Woof, woof.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens. Well, you and nothing. I got no boyfriend. I just wanna fuck. Well, you and nothing. I got no boyfriend. I just wanna fuck. Well, you and nothing. I got no boyfriend. I just wanna fuck.
It's like a rebirthing or
the devil, but I'm saying the devil is influencing them.
Forgive me, Lord. If there are 10 good people, you still destroy the city?
If I get 10 good people, I will not destroy the city.
God knew why Abraham
Was called to help these people get free of their sin.
were the good people in Sodom, so he sent his angels to warn them. Soon, there was a storm in Sodom and Gomorrah. It rained fire. 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 It rained fire.
blindfolded just so that you know where they're going.
All right, we are on air from Xpizza. This is Radio Bonita. Radio Bonita is a radio lab in the tradition of Latin America, founded by Brujas in 2020. Currently running out of 190 Front Street. I am here in the studio with Graham Fortgrang, and we are going to talk about the upcoming party at a soon-to-be released location, sponsored by Field, and we're gonna be just chatting a little bit about the vibes that you can expect at the party. Graham, you want to talk a little bit about where this idea came from, and what people can expect when they're showing up?
Yeah. Hey guys, how we doing? We are here on South Street, Seaport, with the Dirty Mag crew. What up, Dirty Mag? Woo! So New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve, but New Year's Day, which is kind of cool. Honestly, like, I rarely throw parties on New Year's Eve anymore because it's just so crazy. So I'm excited that this actually is a kickoff of 2023, which is crazy. And yeah, I think in New York, it's a dime a dozen of another night in another club, and we're doing something different by bringing that energy in a whole new environment, which is a bathhouse. We can't say which one yet. However, expect music, expect cold plunges, expect saunas, and whatever those little weeds are that you smack people with when you're in the sauna. It's gonna be a good time. We've got a bunch of different DJs coming out. But more importantly, what up, Buckley? More importantly, we're excited to see, we're excited to set a different tone for the new year. Meeting people other than your group of friends, dancing, different scenarios, different environments. So yeah, should be good.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be so fun. People can bring their bathing suits. Recommend that you bring your own towels and maybe your own sandals. Turn a look. Wear some makeup that you're just going to sweat off. Have a dance party in the pool. You will soon find out who the DJs are. We're going to announce that tomorrow or the next day. Very exciting. And so you have been throwing these parties for a second. You've thrown bathhouse parties before. What is a story that you could share that might get people pumped for the night?
So I think, like, one of the cool things is because you're sweating, people aren't crazy drunk, which means, like, people are talking and you're actually meeting a ton of new people. And that's, like, one thing that I fucking love. There's, like, a 150-foot swimming pool where, like, an 80s style dance party will emerge. We saw last time some awesome synchronized dancing, which was very cool. It's also smoking friendly, so you can kind of live out your, like, mafia, Scarface fantasies of, like, sitting in the tub, smoking your cigar, hanging out with the boys or the girls. I would say the highlight is definitely the sanctum of the bathhouse, which is the VIP room. And it has this, ironically enough, cheesy portrait of Scarface hanging over the hot tub with a pool table adjacent. So expect some pretty iconic photo shoots going on in there. expect some pretty heated games of pool. And yeah, everything else stays in the VIP room, I think.
What happens in the bathhouse stays in the bathhouse, which is also why we're asking people to check their phones in the lockers, and we will have our own photographer who will be taking portraits. But we're not really going to be allowing photography in the rest of the bathhouse, only in the VIP room. Photos will be taken by Lauren Lepore, who is at 35.millimeter mm as in millimeter mistress from South Bronx Studios. And she has photographed some of our past parties. There's some really, really funny ones that she took of Crackhead Barney and me and Rachel Rabbit White and Bryn Michaels that I can share later. But if you are tuning in from the field chat room, feel free to send us questions, thoughts, and different things that you are getting excited about. We're gonna play some more music, and we will be back shortly. feedback. So Graham and I are throwing this party on New Year's Day. Some things that you should know if you are trying to get in. One, you have to be a field member. So you have to download the app, How do you do this? Open your phone, go to the App Store, go to FEELD Co. and download the app. You can then be added to a chat room where you will be able to chat with other people who have RSVP'd for the event. Very, very cute. You might even find a date. Maybe there's another freak like you in there. Very, very cool. What else do you have to do? You have to RSVP using the Eventbrite link in the @DirtyMagOfficial link in bio. You RSVP there. The other thing that you need to do is wait to be confirmed as someone who is going to be able to attend. You're basically, by RSVPing, entering a lottery in which you may win a ticket to be one of the people who attend the event. So please follow all those steps and stay tuned.
What up, what up? So, for those who are wondering, what is Field? Field is a dating app. Field is a dating app. I would say you describe it as like a kink positive or like sex positive dating app. I'm on it. It's not creepy. I can vouch. It's kind of a place where you can be very upfront about what you like and don't like and find other people that like the shit that you like. So if you are making a profile to go to the event, check it out for a second. You can go on it as an individual. You can go on it as a couple. So you can link your couple and essentially put out an ad for a third as a couple, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's pretty versatile. If you're coming to the party, definitely check out the app, play around before you go. You might meet some people who are there. And yeah, I think someone's coming to get some pizza, so let's play some music.
I know I may be young, but I've got feelings too. And I need to do what I feel like doing. So let me go and just listen, 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 and just listen. Listen, listen, listen.
right. Well, we were actually just having a really interesting conversation in the studio and decided to start talking on air because we're just talking about our different experiences with different apps and why we think Field is interesting, and also just, there are a lot of differences across the sexual spectrum of people's experiences with dating apps. So yeah, we were kind of just talking about how there's not really a space for like lesbian, queer, bisexual women to be like really upfront and slutty. And just kind of like why that is, and like people's, our different experiences with Grindr and with Tinder and with Field. So yeah, I don't know if people want to riff a little.
What up, guys? Yeah, it's so funny. A lot of the straight people I know are very jealous of the concept of Grindr because you can literally at any hour go on and have multiple men willing to come over. And I think that's, for me, what the appeal is of other dating apps where you can be more direct. What we were just talking about is that you feel kind of creepy sometimes. Like being direct with someone saying, oh, this is what I'm looking for. Especially guy on girl. And interestingly enough, I think also girl on guy. You can also feel like you're being too direct. Yeah. Do you ever feel that way? No.
With Field, I don't use it to find men, so I actually don't know. But so I don't know about that. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's more just like that it's hard to figure out what the sweet spot is. Like it's less that I don't think that I've found that being upfront will mean that a guy or anyone will think I'm creepy, but I do like, you just really have to feel it out to see if the vibe is there. I guess like that's like what's sort of rare about the sort of like more like instantaneous hookup apps is you like can meet someone first and like sleep with them and then see if like there's chemistry, and that doesn't really exist elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean the big thing, guys, is we just have to abolish the ghosting culture. If people just ghosted less and said no more, I think there'd be like a lot of less ambiguity.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with our culture, and like with Field, I think the intention is right. They're trying to make it an app where we can do these things, where we can meet up and hook up, but we just have to get the voice inside our head that's making us think we're creepy when we're not, right?
Yeah, and also I really agree with Graham. I think just like being upfront and saying like, no, I'm not interested in that. It's like people just like have self-advocate. If you don't want something, that's like great, like you're also, that's your way of figuring out what you want and don't want too. Like think about it, like could I see that happening? Would that be fun for me? Would I be able to like work through my feelings? If not, maybe not now, whatever. I think that that's important, but I actually haven't been on a dating app in like 6 years and downloaded Field last week, and it's been fun on there. The first question I got from someone was, did you go to this high school? And I said, they were like, I'm a couple of years younger than you. I went to high school with you. I was like, oh, okay, all right.
So much for your
I know, doesn't have the same sort of like anonymous quality, but it is cool that it's different than like Tinder, for instance. You can have like Grindr, the usernames that aren't necessarily your name, so it has that quality that's more like, has that like queer anonymous culture, anonymous sex element if that's what you're looking for.
Did you use a made-up name or something?
I think I just said Rip Baby or something like that. But people don't know like what that means. But if they know that I'm Ripley, then they know. Anyway, yes. But the last time that I went out with someone on a dating app was actually someone who's going to be on the air at 7 p.m. named Sophia Giovannitti. We met on Tinder, and we had a great time. We went to Odessa Diner, and which is now closed, RIP to a historic New York landmark. But we went out, we had a great time. I was in a very depressive state of my life, and she wanted to go out with me again, and I was like not trying to do that. And then we met up like 2 years later, and I really wanted to date her, and she was in a relationship. So now we're very good friends, but that is the best experience that I've had on a dating app. Anyone else want to share theirs?
The only experience I've had on a dating app with someone, it ended up being that publicist that I told you about. It was, I met up with her at this park, and it ended up she was Marilyn Manson's publicist at the time when they had to drop him. And that was really interesting just to learn about that. But yeah, that was about it. Never saw her again.
Did you hook up?
No, I wasn't into it. It was, I don't know, we smoked weed, and that I think kind of went south. And I was like really, really straightforward with what I wanted to do, and she had never been with another girl before, and I was just, I don't know, I don't like feeling like the like teacher. Like I don't, like I'm just trying to get down and dirty.
You don't want to shepherd someone. No.
That's some people's kink, you know?
Oh my God, yeah.
No shame.
Yeah, you need to have your shepherds. Yeah. I'm trying to think of any good stories. I met someone on a dating app once. We had a very awkward date, but I really liked her, but it just wasn't the vibe. And I ran into her, I kid you not, 3 years later at a hotel bar in Miami. And finally slept with her, yeah. It was like a huge hero journey for me. What? Yeah. Yeah, we kind of dated for a little bit. But it was a cool experience. Otherwise, I'm like an IRL guy for the most part. I'm trying to get more, I think like dating apps work for like physical needs, but I like meeting people at like places and weddings and at the bar and the subway, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that that's why we're really stoked about this event, you know, because like it gives people an opportunity to actually meet people who share some values around their sexuality, hopefully, and are, you know, really open-minded, and also just like want to spend New Year's Day at a spa at 11 p.m. So what you can also expect is to have the entire bathhouse to yourself and the rest of the attendees, which is very exciting.
Also, it's fucking cool that Field is like taking the crazy chance on doing IRL events. I met someone on Field recently, and we were just talking about this. He goes to every Field gathering. They happen at like the Standard Beer Garden, and he's like, I've never not taken someone home from a Field gathering. He loves them. So I think it's kind of cool that they're like, you know, Tinder, all this, you know, I think it's hard to tastefully bring people together in like a sexual container. So I'm excited to see what that feels like, because it's kind of like a given. You don't have to talk about, you know, oh, are you into kink? You're like at a kink friendly gathering. That kind of icing off the table, I think, is kind of cool.
Yeah, totally. And I think that what's really special for me is that New York and just like queer culture in general has this history with bathhouses, you know, where that was like a space where people would spend a lot of time during the week before, after work, skipping work if you're unemployed. And it was a place to meet people and have anonymous sex. And I know that is somewhat still a part of the culture, but it's kind of far and few in between. There's a lot more sort of regulations, and obviously COVID has really affected people's comfort level. So I think that this will be a really cool experiment, and yeah, stoked to be a part of it.
Yeah, I was actually reading about the Continental Club the other night. It's crazy history. That was like one of the most famous, it was underneath some hotel. It became one of the most famous bathhouses, and they had a DJ and a dance floor and would throw killer parties with, like, at the time, the biggest DJs in the city, like Frankie Knuckles, would play at the bathhouses. And you could go, originally, it was just guys only, and then so many people heard about the vibe that they started letting guys and girls, straight people as well, could go. There's this awesome story of Alfred Hitchcock apparently would cruise whenever he was in the city just to watch. He would just like post up and watch the whole scene unfold, and just like he would never get engaged, but he would just like have a smoke and like check out the scene. And I just like love the idea of like Frankie Knuckles DJing, Alfred Hitchcock in his big belly in a robe, bunch of guys fucking each other, and I'm like, sounds like a vibe.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. I mean, there's not. I mean, this is something that that Dirty Mag talks about a lot. For those who don't know, who might just be tuning in and don't know what Dirty is, Dirty Mag is New York's horniest fashion publication. Very much, you know, kind of drawing on historical sexual deviance and porn magazines and other things that have been very much wiped from the internet and censored, including you know, different aspects of sex worker culture and kind of underground cruising culture. And it's really one that we say is like for the kids who want to land tricks. I won't go into too much of that, but you know, it's very much paying an homage to some of our favorite skate magazines of the 90s and early 2000s, like Big Brother. I actually just got a big stack of old Big Brother magazines for Christmas, and I was flipping through them, and there's, you know, it's basically all the guys who used to run Jackass. And so when I was starting the magazine, I really wanted to kind of harness that juvenile, fun, you know, early 2000s skate and you know, like dude culture, and be like, well, what would it be like if this was like not even like inclusive per se, because you know we do have an audience that is our own, but is you know, just expanded. There's different people doing it than just like, you know, the guys who are eating their own poop and stuff, which is, you know, come full circle, also like a part of the sexual, like the sexual underground and sexual deviant culture. So I think it's kind of funny to think about it that way. But I also got an old copy of Hustler magazine the other day, and for those who don't know, Hustler's Larry Flint, who was the publisher, also was the publisher for Big Brother, and he was a big, he would have been on Field for sure. Him and his his second wife, Althea Flint, were like very much a part of the, you know, basically civil rights movement around, you know, trying to create a level of sexual liberation that wasn't really accessible for people who necessarily read like Playboy. And yeah, so that's just a little background on Dirty. Graham, do you want to talk a little bit about you and what you're up to?
Sure, but before, I just want to set a scene because I was looking up more about the Continental Club. So imagine Betty Midler performing, accompanied by Barry Manilow on the piano at the bathhouse in 1973. You got like Barry on the piano, Betty Midler on the vocals, and then get this, the next day, Larry Levan of Paradise Garage DJing. I mean, this is like the epicenter culturally of like music all converging in such a different, weird place. So, wanted to pay homage to the Continental Club, which is actually partly inspiring the visual aesthetic for some merch that we're going to be dropping at the event, which is super cool. Miles from Dirty Mag, what up, Miles? We love you. Has been pulling all sorts of awesome references from old ads for bathhouses for a limited drop. That will be a t-shirt and a very, very, very limited embroidered robe that will go to one lucky winner at the Bathhouse, New Year's Day 2023. So more on that soon. A little bit about me. I don't know. I don't have much to say. I've been doing events in art and music since I was 17, 18 years old. Grew up in New York. Kind of always felt like I found my family in the night, in terms of the people that I grew up with, that I looked after me, more importantly. So nightlife and coming together under the pretenses of finding places that you can be yourself is super important. It's something I think a lot about. It's one of the reasons that this event and other events that we're working on next year are trying to push the envelope of what an event could look like, how you bring different mediums and artists of different mediums together to create alongside each other. I do these artist residency programs where a bunch of artists come and live together and they make work. So, other than that, I'm just another New Yorker. There's a lot of us here, so I'm stoked to be here. And I don't know, what else, Ripley?
Yeah, I mean, I like when we were riffing about some history. Maybe we can just rap about some New York history stuff. I know that Sam, who's in the studio right now from Uncensored New York and Xpizza, is really into reading and has read Times Square Red, Times Square Blue. And Graham is also a big history nerd. Are there any little snippets of New York City history that you might want to share that people might not know? Mine is that, during the 50s and 60s when there was a big, there was a lot of, there still is, but a lot of police targeting of people who were, quote unquote cross-dressing, whether or not now we might understand them as trans, or just people who were flamboyant and wearing clothes of a quote unquote gender that they were not assigned at birth. That there were laws where you had to be wearing at least 2 articles of clothing from the gender that you were assigned, or that was on your IDs and stuff. And there were also, so that was a big thing. People were trying to fight that specific type of criminalization of gender deviance and sexual deviance. And that was, one of the things that launched the Stonewall riots. But also that there were a lot of new laws that were being instituted against gay bars that said that you couldn't serve liquor if you didn't have a hotel attached to your business. So a lot of bars that served the gay community started opening rooms upstairs that people could rent, which also just ended up adding this whole aspect of sex culture, where you could either hire a sex worker, or you could just go rent a room for an hour and hook up with the person that you just linked up with at the gay bar. So it ended up, something that it was initially supposed to be a means of criminalization actually ended up kind of doing the opposite, which I think was really interesting.
Which happens a lot more than we think. I always think the cool thing about culture, but in New York in particular, is everyone finds a way to grow around all the infrastructure, the laws. For those listening who don't know about the legendary queer-owned Club 57 on Astor Place, look it up. It was a theater, club, art gallery, pretty much everything from Keith Haring drawing nights to they would have a cockroach wrestling night where girls would dress up as cockroaches and wrestle each other. You about any idea you could imagine happened down here, and they had, their whole idea, which I love. There was this awesome documentary on MoMA.org about Club 57. Check it out. It's on YouTube, on the MoMA channel. And they kind of championed this idea that if you were brave enough to get on stage, you were a superstar or an artist in that space. So they would have, a writer perform as a punk band, an opera singer do a painting exposition. They really tried to champion this idea that like anyone can be an artist and you can make any type of art you wanted. That was kind of the ethos. So some of them were more serious and others were more whimsical. And the whole story is so inspiring. You get to hear a little bit from the owner. So that's like a venue that I always wish I got to go to. It was just a crappy little basement. And 7 nights of the week, they had some different weird programming happening there. It was kind of interesting. They made there's this awesome parallel for me where it showed art in a place where you could drink, do drugs, have sex, and enjoy yourself. And now I feel like many museums are trying to make the museums places where you can drink and socialize. They're booking DJs, they're trying to figure out, and I think it's because there's something there of like, how can we like look at art in a way where we're like not uncomfortable in a fucking gallery with like bright lights. You know, like you want to have a transcendental experience with a short film or like a sculpture. Why not like have a couple drinks and be in a good mood? Or if you're sober, be around friends and be laughing. So I think about that a lot. Like, how do we show art in like a more fun environment or a more open environment?
One of my favorite books about that time period is called Policing Public Sex. Do you know about that? Do you? Okay. Yeah, so they reference it in Times Square Red, Times Square Blue. That's how I found out about it. But it's a collection of essays written by different people that they collected, I believe, to show to the city council. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it was just like them showing the ways of why they shouldn't get rid of the porn theaters. And there's like an essay in that book about the architecture of different bathhouses and what they were allowed to do and what they weren't allowed to do when the police were trying to shut down the bathhouses. There were different loopholes they had to keep them open, I believe. Do you know more about that?
I know a story. I was reading the other night the story that these policemen, they would send the best looking policemen into the bathhouse and they would bring their handcuffs underneath their towel and they would sit in the sauna, and when they were trying to shut down a bathhouse, they would wait for someone to advance them and then arrest them. Like a sting, which is so dark and like so crazy that I bet the commissioner like picked the young good looking cop, like, all right, go in there and like hide your handcuffs under your towel in the sauna. Like, yeah, so crazy. So I've heard all sorts of like the ins and outs, because some of them, I read one of them in the West Side had boasted 150 private rooms throughout the bathhouse, which is crazy. So they had all these like loopholes of how the architecture could be set up, what the open areas could be like, what the private areas could be like. Yeah, I'm always curious. They said that there's one members only remaining one on the Upper East Side. I looked into it to check it out. The reviews said that it is still active, but it's mostly like a 50 plus crowd. But I was curious to check out what the scene might be. Yeah, you have to pay like a daily member rate. That's how the loophole. But it's, you know, a little more hush hush or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, but even at places like almost all the bathhouses that I know of have like what they call like a day membership. So maybe this is something that basically all the bathhouses had to institute, you know, which is interesting and kind of connected to what I was saying about the hotel law, like the liquor license in the hotel having rooms for rent above a bar is these ways in which like businesses manage to stay open. But yeah, for those who haven't read Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, really incredible book by Samuel Delaney, and someone who I would love to have interviewed in Dirty for an upcoming issue. Our next issue is actually called Tricks, Trades, and Chasers, and it's going to be about, sort of venerating those categories, who I think have like come to really be like villainized or like misunderstood as queer culture has become more fractured and kind of I think as a result of neoliberalism and austerity, like divorcing who are traditionally seen as the quote-unquote fetishists from the rest of the queer community, as opposed to like historically like people who are straight having occasional sex or DL sex with other men like was not considered like pervy or messed up. It was just like another component of, or another sexual position, and same with people who buy sex. It's like actually like if buying sex is also criminalized, then like then sex worker rights means also advocating for the decriminalization of people who are engaged in that economy from a consumer perspective. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to kind of think through the evolution of what's been considered sexually deviant from like an economic, like capitalist perspective. I'm sure that Sam has more to say on this.
I was gonna say that's one of my favorite parts about Times Square Red, Times Square Blue is the argument about the porn theaters being a place where class doesn't exist, where all different classes are together, and he goes into contact versus network situation where a contact situation is you can be somewhere and meet someone and connect, and it has nothing to do with money, if that makes sense.
Or like your class background versus there's also like a lot about this in like different cultural studies research, I guess, that sort of talks about how in instances of social rupture, people like an example of this is like kind of during Occupy Wall Street era, people coming together around capitalism that otherwise might not have been as like people who might have been like raised upper middle class or middle class ending up kind of realizing that the debt system and capitalism is like rigged against like everyone except for the quote unquote 1%, and how like in a social rupture people like end up in a similar affective space, meaning like sharing disdain for government and the economic structure, and thus like having more possibility for social upheaval and rebellion. And I think that that's also true historically of like the sexual margins in spaces that especially were being targeted because they were known to be places where people were either soliciting sex or where things that were considered other criminal activities were taking place. But Samuel Delaney is a really incredible writer. Anyone else want to go for it?
I think, one thing, just like tangentially on that, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is also just like how you open up the door to have those uncomfortable conversations. I think like one cool thing about Field is it's opening up the conversation about what you like and what you don't like. I actually, when I went on the app, I thought it was really cool that people were like asking me what exactly I wanted and what I like, what I'm not into. At the time I was on with my partner, and people were interested in, what we were looking for in a third, what sort of dynamic, and it immediately like destigmatizes the whole thing, because then you're just like, oh, all right, well, like, and there's such a stigma still. I mean, I can't tell you how many straight guys I know are still uncomfortable when I try to advocate for them to put things up their ass, and I'm just telling them like from a physical pleasure, like you guys are missing out, and people are like get blush and they don't want to have the conversation. It's like multiple people that I've brought this up to were like, I'm not cool enough for Field. And I'm like, that's so funny. I'm like, it's literally a place where you can just say what you like and try to find other people that match. But there's definitely a stigma, more on the straight crowd, of people being like, oh, I'm not kinky enough for Field. And I was like, I don't think there's like a threshold, It's like, I remember this conversation earlier on that I had with someone about what being queer meant, and it was someone who identified as trans, who was like, the most important thing that anyone ever told me is there's no such thing as being trans enough. Like, it's just like, if you identify with it, it's okay. You don't have to like prove your queerness. And like, that's what I would say to anyone interested in the event is, you don't have to like prove your kinkiness or your like fetishness. Like, come to the event, meet other people, and just be okay with it being something you can talk about. So I think like that's like the thing that I'm trying to push the most is like you don't have to prove that you're like, you can out freak someone to be part of those conversations, because it's definitely something that's intimidating if you're not like identify or even comfortable saying like, oh, I have kinks. Anyone want to comment on that?
I was just gonna say that Field can be the door that opens all the things that you want to explore,
Yeah. Okay, so my ex-girlfriend, who's I look at as like a spiritual leader in my life, she sent me this book today called I have to find it. It is called, for those who are listening, because they should check it out. One second.
We can also drop this in the chat for those who are listening as well.
Existential kink, and it's all about learning to find joy in your dark kinks that even might be fucked up, sexual and not sexual. And so this girl has this crazy take on the story of Persephone. So Persephone, obviously, she's the goddess of.
She's the daughter of the goddess of spring, and she basically there's a famous painting called The Rape of Persephone. But I know all of this story because I used to listen to all the Greek myths on tape when I was little. But yeah, basically Persephone is in the garden in the springtime, and Hades, who is the kind of overlord of the underworld, comes up the ground kind of parts, and he grabs her and brings her down to the underworld, and he feeds her pomegranates. And the pomegranates, basically, like, because she eats the pomegranates, which is like a part of the food of the underworld, she has to stay there for like half of the year. Like, it's supposed to be, I think, the winter time where her mother is not like ruling over the Earth's season. And yeah, that's the story.
Okay, so get this. So it's seen as like this innocent maiden gets raped by Pluto, dragged into underworld. Her take is that in order to experience her own innocence and pureness, she created Pluto out of her own mind to rape herself, and she created this entity in order to experience her own innocence. She created this other entity, Pluto, that essentially then damned her into the underworld, and eventually the story holds that she was tricked into eating the pomegranates. Eventually she decides to own her own darkness and come to terms with the fact that she made her own hell, and make a heaven out of her own hell by saying, this is a part of me. Like some dark part of me wanted to ruin my own innocence and pureness. So she created Pluto in her mind to rape her and undo everything that was perfect about her. And so then she ends up in eating these pomegranates, realizing that she has love for Pluto because Pluto is this entity that loved her so much that he was willing to do this terrible thing to obey what Persephone, who created Pluto, wanted to be. And it's this whole mindfuck thing that like she created Pluto to honor her shadow and all these dark kinks in her mind so she could better understand herself.
I love that. I think that's a really interesting story, and I think that it reminds me of Belladonna of Sadness. Have you seen that movie?
No.
It's really amazing because that similar. I mean, I don't want to give it away, but essentially, it's been censored many times. Essentially, is about a witch who is. It's about a witch. I don't even. It's like a psychedelic, like really sexy animated film. The score is incredible. It's like definitely the thing to take. Like, I mean, I honestly wouldn't even recommend taking mushrooms and going to see it. Like, it's like its own little trip. But yeah, like in it there is like a tiny dick-shaped devil that like, or like you're not really sure if it's the devil or if it's her conscience, and then like at the end you kind of realize that it's both, which is really cool. You know, her to like see stories about people sort of like dealing with their shadow selves and their shadow desires. And I definitely agree that starting the conversation around that and from a place of just like, this is not even like just trying to normalize it, because ultimately like what we've gotten out of assimilation is like not too many incredible things, but I think that coming to terms with the fact that it is just common and that like everyone has things, and it's like just whether or not you're willing to like talk about them and work through them and like see them not as like a demon, an inner demon, and letting them like ruin you.
Totally. And like the book, I read the first couple chapters today, was like your kink can also be like suffering, meaning like you might like, you know, breaking up with a partner when it's getting too good or feeling too safe because you think you need to be alone, or you might like being, you know, working a job where you don't get paid as much because you secretly like kind of struggling, or, you know, there's all these interesting things where it relates outside of sexual, like what are your fucked up kinks that like got me thinking like, oh, what are my kinks? Like, what do I, you know, overwork. I love to overwork myself, and I love to push myself into uncomfortable situations where I'm like, fuck, there's a party at a bathhouse in 10 days. We have to plan. Like, you know, we have no idea what's going to happen, how many people are going to show up, or how to deal with X, Y, or Z, but let's just do it and see what happens. And let's get a kink-friendly dating app to get involved. Like, for me, I love those weird situations. That's like what I get off on, having to figure those situations out.
Totally. I love that this is going to be our closing kind of like thoughts. On my field profile that I made, I said I'm not into getting stepped on. My kink is giving people a leg up.
Oh, I love that. Mic drop.
I think one of my favorite things is public sex, which, you know, could happen at a bathhouse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lots of showers. Lots of showers. Is the public sex thing for you? Do you need someone to notice, or is it just that you need to know?
No, it just like talking about it, meeting up, bathrooms. Yeah. I've only done that once, like with a actual stranger.
Yeah. Premeditated, or
No, it wasn't premeditated.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I definitely like have a big public sex kink, and have like, there was where the amphitheater used to be, like down I like east side. Like the first time that my business partner actually, the first time that we ever went out together, we had sex. So there was someone invited us to like an outside birthday party. It was summer, like I think like August, and we ended up having like literally walking like a few feet away from where people were sitting and just having sex in the grass, which was really fun.
I'm trying to think of my favorite. New York City taxi cab. That was a vibe. There was like some like vibration because we were going over the bridge of like the car jostling up or down. No, full sex. Yeah, the driver knew, just couldn't. He didn't want to say anything. We're on a bridge, but it was a vibe. Yeah. Anyone here playing?
I've only done hand stuff in a cab, but a few times. But also that was like kind of back when I would like go out and stay out late because like you kind of end up like last call like kind of vibes. But yeah,
that's like a subculture of hookup culture, or there was like a phase in my life where the people I slept with were just the people who stayed out the latest as me. It was kind of, I don't want to say sad because it was interesting, but like there was an understanding that we were hooking up not because we actually really liked each other, but we were like consistently the last one still awake. If that makes sense? Anyone resonates with me?
Yeah, one time at 88 Palace, the club that's in the dim sum place, like I had that like started hooking up with someone on the dance floor at like 4 a.m. It was a Kalela Fade to Mind like in 2014, and yeah, definitely was like, okay, we're going home because we're like the last ones here. I think that might have been the first time that I ever took home like an actual stranger. Like, do not know who he was. Do not know. Well, thank you for tuning in. This has been Dirty Magazine's Ripley Soprano and Brother Graham. We are on Radio Bonita. Radio Bonita is the anti-imperial radio in the tradition of Latin America for New York City's underground. We are at Xpizza at 190 Front Street. We will be having open decks from 6 to 7. Come through. At 7, Yuri from Cancel World is coming on. Oh, 6 to 7. And then 7 to 8 is Sophia Giovannitti and Tourmaline, the artist, who will no doubt be intellectualizing and schooling all of us. But thank you for tuning in. Please RSVP for a chance to get a ticket to our event at Dirty Mag Official on Instagram's link in bio. Thank you for tuning in. It has been a pleasure. Say bye, Graham.
What up, guys? See you New Year's Day.
Have a lovely New Year.